Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Envisiontech podcast. This week is going to be the conclusion of our three-part mini-series with Trevor Boland. As I mentioned in the intro, this is going to be the last part of our little mini-series with Trevor. So I just want to start off by saying, again, a huge thank you for him for agreeing to be in this little mini-series that we have had, because I don't know about you, but I've actually learned a lot and I found it really insightful. This episode is going to be really good. We're going to hopefully get Trevor to read some Braille here at the start of the episode, and then later on in the episode he's going to tell us about other things like the House of Accessibility, which is a really interesting acronym that he came up with. So make sure that you stay tuned to hear that, because honestly I've never heard it before, but it's a really kind of great way to think about things. And I suppose just one thing I have tried to do when I have a guest is to kind of get them to experience something a little bit new, Trevor.
Oh,
And yeah, I know. I'm not sure how this one's going to go because I wanted it to be
okay.
different from the last one that I did. So if you come down here to the surprise segment in the document, you'll see that I'm using that here. So I asked Trevor the other day if he had ever used or had ever been familiar with Braille, and he said no.
No.
And I talked about Braille a little bit in a recent episode, and I'm going to have this in the description as well. So if you want to have a look, you can. But I'm going to paste some Braille into the document here for Trevor, and I just want to see if he has any idea what it might say. And if he doesn't, that's fine. I gave him literally no warning. He has no experience with Braille.
No.
But I'm just curious, and I like to kind of get people to have a look at something new. My last guest, I got him to try out a screen reader and try and get to Outlook and send me an email, and he couldn't.
Ooh.
He couldn't do it. So this will be interesting enough. So
give me one moment to get ChatGPT open.
It'll probably get it wrong. It'll hallucinate.
Okay, I see it.
Right?
Okay. Please don't tell me it's my name in Braille, is it? No.
So I'll tell people it's 7 characters long, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 7 characters long.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, are any two the same? Because that would be a giveaway. The first one, there's one, so it could be an A if it's just one thing, but then it's 2 are inverses. One looks like an L, but I'm guessing it's hardly an L in like a regular alphabet. Oh God, I actually don't know. I'm not allowed to copy and paste it or anything like that, am I?
No, you can't cheat.
No. Oh God.
Well, you can copy paste, you can copy paste it if you need to, but
no. Okay, I won't cheat.
No guesses at all what this could be.
Yeah.
7 characters.
7 characters. I bet it's going to be something like, it's a topic that we've already covered in today's session, is it?
Oh, this is actually our next topic. Great segue.
It's not the headings
No.
they're going to be. No, I've no idea. No.
It is actually your name.
Is it?
That is actually your name in Braille. Yeah.
Do you know what? I knew it was going to be something like that, but like.
Now, I will admit, I did on purpose throw you off. That first character there. So if you look in the description, you'll see it. The first character is actually a .6, which means that the next letter will be a capital letter. So I knew that if I put that in there, it would throw you off because it would be one character too many. Because in Braille, that's how you have to show that something's capitalized. So that's Trevor in Braille. Obviously, each character there stands for a letter except the first one. So yeah, no, you were right. Actually, the first, well, you didn't quite guess, but your first assumption was correct. That is Trevor in Braille.
Oh God, that is so cool.
Okay. I'm glad that went well.
Cool. That's okay.
Actually, only recently found out that you can type in Braille on computers. I actually didn't know that.
Really? And would your screen reader then read it out?
No. So, okay.
Yeah.
My screen reader, you can use Braille displays with it. If you don't know what a Braille display is, I've talked about them before. They're essentially little devices that will actually let you read Braille from a computer. So they'll have like little pistons or actuators or whatever that will raise the dots to kind of show you what the Braille is. But when my screen reader reads this, it just says, so it says, hold on, there we go, Braille 6, and then the next one is Braille 2, 3, 4, 5. So it'll tell me what Braille dots are there, but it won't tell me what they mean because depending on the Braille code, it could be different.
Mm,
So it just tells me that it's Braille and it tells me what Braille dots are there. But if I have a
mm,
Braille display plugged in, it will show up on the Braille display what it's actually meant to be. So,
yeah,
um,
it's amazing. Okay.
so yeah,
Hmm.
that's our little kind of surprise segment for Trevor. Okay.
Actually, just one thing. So, is there technology out there yet that can raise, say, like a type of glass or something, so it will have like Braille on it or something, like a type of smart glass?
Oh,
Or we?
no, I don't think so. I
No.
don't think so.
Okay.
That's and if there is, it's probably really expensive. Although I suppose Braille displays are already expensive, so that doesn't mean much. No, I don't think so. But that would be very cool if it could kind of like morph instead of having
Yeah,
these moving parts. That
I
would be really cool,
know.
actually.
That would be so cool. I love that idea. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. I'm actually that I'm sure that could work. Honestly, I might look into that after this. That would be cool.
Mm,
Um, But yeah, so that was just a fun little thing. I said if you want to see that, it'll be in the description, and I'll have character by character the little translation for it, so you can see what the T is, what the R is, etc.
great.
Um, okay, so let's see here. I suppose we're kind of coming towards the end a little bit here. I feel like we've covered a lot of really good stuff. So I suppose you mentioned something really interesting, which we were going to kind of talk about 2 to 3 concrete steps to make things accessible is one of the bullet points I have in here. But actually, Trevor mentioned something really interesting beforehand, which is a new acronym that you've sort of started using recently. Do you want to tell people about that? I believe it's HOUSE, isn't it?
It sure is. It's house because one of the things, just for the last 2 years, talking to staff and students about accessibility, is trying to find a way to make accessibility memorable and trying to put it in a way where I can chunk the information in a way that can recall them really simply. So I've taken the word house. So even the word house, I got a bit carried away one day because I love these shows where it talks about fashion houses. So I was like watching a show called The House of Dior, and I had a moment where I just thought, could there be like a house of accessibility, this fabulous house where we, have all these multiple skills and disciplines in it. So kind of like the House of Dior, where it's all broken up into different types of people with different types of sets of skills, all bringing all their skills together to create all these magnificent, beautiful masterpieces. So I thought, okay, let's take the notion of the house and call it the House of Accessibility. So I had actually thought I was going to go with a different direction. And then I started to realize, oh, the house might turn into an interesting acronym. And then when I started teasing out the acronym, I realized, well, H for headings and structure. So that filled in a place. The O didn't come immediately, but then I realized the O for alt text might be interesting because, ornamental or description sometimes are the choices that we have when we encounter alt text. So like just clicking a button to say an image is just for ornamental or decorative, and then the description where we type in the description. So then the U for house is the URLs and links. So there's definitely good and not so good ways of bringing links into documents and websites and such. So that's where we talk about the U. And then the S in house is about sans serif and readability. So sans serifs are my favorite type of font. So I just become a tiny bit of a font nerdaholic. And whenever I talk about this, and I talk ad nauseum about my favorite fonts, which are Futura and Century Gothic. And yeah, I'm always looking for opportunities to use those types of fonts. So there's many different types of sans serif fonts. And why we talk about them is because they are one of the easier type of font styles to read, because basically they're kind of quite geometric and solid and very easy to identify the letters, which is good because then if the letters are easier to identify, that improves what I call the readability. So a lot of what I talk about is simple things about how we format and structure and lay out our information to make it more readable. And then the last one in House is E, and that's about evaluating our accessibility. And that's really encouraging people to look for advice and feedback on whatever it is that they create and look for these evaluation checkers, these accessibility evaluation checkers that exist in tools like, for example, PowerPoint and Word. They have really good ones. They don't cover everything, so they always might miss one or two things, but they do catch a lot of the accessibility issues. So that's great when we know these accessibility checkers exist, because then we don't have to think or guess as much about accessibility. And that's we can lean into the supports and advice of these accessibility checkers. So then in a nutshell, House is headings, ornamental, URLs, sans serif, and evaluate. And that gives this recipe of newbies or new people to accessibilities to really dive in and to get an overview about some of the aspects of accessibility and really zone in on these in an hour and a half long workshop and explore them and really take the mystery out of accessibility, so that they can be empowered about accessibility rather than be afraid of it, which sometimes can happen.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the acronym myself. I actually only heard about it today when I was talking to Trevor before the episode, and I really like it. I've heard of loads of other ones, and I've heard of loads of other kind of systems people use to kind of decide what's important or not. But I mean, I feel like these are some of the really important things, especially for me as a software engineer. That's kind of the main things that I'll find wrong with the website. It doesn't have headings, or the link just says "click me," or
Uh-huh.
the button has an icon, but they haven't labeled it. It's not actually meant to be decorative, but it is.
Okay.
Um, whatever it might be. So I think that's a really useful acronym, because if you cover all those kind of bases, as you said earlier, you've covered like 95% of any of the problems. And those are all pretty simple things, I feel like. Adding headings and adding alt text and using different tools to evaluate what you've done. Like we talked about with the color contrast earlier, for example.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
like it's really simple stuff, to be honest with you, and I think that's a nice acronym because it's simple. It's just house. It's a house. With those five different kind of stories or floors, as you said. So I think
Yeah.
that's a good acronym.
And then the whole thing about House is really it's about making, like, what are the ingredients of making someone feel at home, or in a sense making them feel like
Hmm.
they belong somewhere. So the whole thing about House is that when we get our house in order, we promote like belonging. So, and
Hmm.
that's the whole thing about the house, is like, how do we equate accessibility to belonging? Because I'm sure we've all experienced in our lives times where we haven't felt like we belong. And when we've experienced that, it doesn't feel good. So, and if one of the ways that we can promote belonging is through accessibility skills that we use and incorporate, and eventually don't have to think about because we use them in every day of our workings, whatever that looks like, whatever our contexts are, that is a simple way of promoting belonging in the way you work for all these new possible students or customers or whatever your context is. That house is really a way of promoting that way of like being homely to homely and welcoming to whoever your stakeholders are.
Yeah. Yeah, like I really love it because I know even myself, whether I was in a lecture or something, and maybe the lecturer sent us out a presentation or some notes or a quiz or whatever, and it
Mm,
wasn't accessible. Like I did feel excluded,
yeah,
and but even going to a website, if it doesn't have like headings or alt text, or the URLs just say click me, and I'm like, I don't know what this actually does.
yeah,
Honestly, I don't feel very welcome there. But if I go to a website and it is accessible, like I actually do feel more welcome. And it can honestly be quite upsetting when things aren't accessible. And that might sound a
oh,
bit,
yeah,
silly to people who maybe haven't experienced that. But I feel like that's actually I've thought about it like that, but I feel like just hearing you say it now, it really like clicked that yeah, it is kind of about making you feel at home. And I feel like it makes the acronym even better because it's great for, remembering because it's really easy. It's just house. But I feel like just even the meaning behind it also really helps it kind of make sense and really show you how important it is. Just
oh,
those
yeah,
five little steps can make people feel welcome, whether it's, on a website, even just a document, or even if you're just sending somebody an email,
yeah,
um, whatever it is, so I think that's really great. And I just really appreciate you kind of coming on here today, Trevor, and talking a lot about accessibility and your experience, especially within, like higher education kind of level. And I suppose before we kind of wrap up here, is there anything else that you might want to talk about, or anything else that
Um,
you think would be important or not really?
well, you shouldn't ask me questions like that. That's the first thing you shouldn't. So there's this other tiny little thing that I'm briefly going to talk
Mhm.
about, where I think when we talk about accessibility in higher education, the focus is always on the staff knowing
Yeah.
accessibility. And I get it. Absolutely. Staff should definitely know the basics of accessibility. And it's going to happen. And we're getting there, and it's happening, and it's exciting. But one of the people that sometimes I'm afraid are getting forgotten is that the students, are
Mhm.
important. So when I think of the universities and these great thriving communities that exist within universities, like, the students are central to that. So a little part of me always wants the students to be involved in whatever this inclusive education experience is, and not only to be included in it, but actually be part of that inclusive solution to it. So, and one of my dream, which has been going on for a few years now, and I talk about it at a few kind of events and presentations, is that students are also going to, have accessibility skills and be able to incorporate them into their own assignments. Like, for students to be able to apply house to their own work. So headings, ornamental or descriptive for images, being able to insert links appropriately, choosing the right kind of fonts, thinking about readability, and then evaluating the accessibility as well, because ultimately we want to be able to future-proof society. That's really the goal here of accessibility. And we want to say, for people who either, like, I don't have a physical disability. However, that's not to say something might happen and I might acquire one, or down the line, like, I see my mother has arthritis, and physical accessibility might become more part of my life if I've inherited, unfortunately, really bad arthritis. So what accessibility is to us differs at different ages of our life as well. So that a notion of future-proofing society, I think it is, like, essential about making sure that everyone, no matter what their abilities are now, but what their abilities might be in the future, that can change. And again, these accessibility skills, they're so tiny in the big scheme of things, that if we're able to just make this like a habit that we're able to apply in our everyday lives, whether we're staff or whether we're students, like, it really is just going to be a huge, I think it's even a lifelong skill now. And I think we're getting to the point where we're going to start thinking about accessibility skills as normal in, like, eventually primary schools, maybe even secondary schools, and then even in the workplaces. That we're going to just create reports and documents and websites that are all about this. So really, I think we're only at the beginnings of what accessibility is in society and who are the people involved. And I think it's going to widen as the conversation widens. And really, it's going to be about expecting everyone to have some kind of accessibility awareness or knowledge. And that will be the exciting time when people are really going to think about what makes an inclusive society.
Yeah. I mean, so that is actually, I think, one of the most important things we've probably mentioned here today, if not the most important thing. When I was in college, for example, one of the best things that would or could happen is if one of my classmates reached out and said, "Hey, I'm working on this project. Is this accessible? Could you check this out for
Yeah.
me?" Oh, hey, maybe we're in a team together and we're working on a group project. We have to write up a document. They're like, "Oh yeah, is Google Docs all right? Is that accessible? Will you be able to use that? What about Word?"
Yeah.
Like, people asking me things like that is honestly one of the best things they can do. And yeah, I mean, obviously, if people know it already, that's great. But I feel like sometimes people are also a bit afraid, which is a
Yeah.
bit weird. I felt like some of my classmates were a bit afraid, especially at the start. When we first started doing our degree, they were a bit like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to ask because people might get upset." And yeah, I mean, some people might, but I feel like in general, people don't. And that's something really important to keep in mind. Even if you don't know, putting in the effort to learn or asking questions is really, really valuable. And it is important for students to kind of learn this stuff, because when I wanted to do my thesis
Mm.
in the final year of my degree, one of the things was they could provide some examples of theses, right? And that was fantastic. So I've never written a thesis before, but now I have to write 75 pages on this thing I want to make. But a lot of the theses were PDFs, and that's
Oh.
it's not necessarily a bad thing at first, but most of them were just made of images, and they actually had to go and like specifically find some that weren't just images for me, because a lot of students just had their PDFs as images, so I couldn't read them at all. But obviously, if students are aware of that not being accessible, and if that's kind of taught to them, oh, this is how you should actually make your PDFs, they're
Mm.
probably going to do that forever. Number
Yeah.
one, they're going to do it in college, and then when they go to work or whatever, it's just going to be better for everybody else. Like I think that is really important. It's not just up to the lecturers, because I don't expect the lecturer to sit there for 10 hours and type out this, these images into an actual text document. That would be ridiculous. And
Mm.
the real solution there is to have the students, know about this stuff in the first place. And even in my web development class, we actually didn't really learn about accessibility. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, this is fine. Like I get that maybe you don't know about this as a lecturer, but you're currently teaching the next lecturer, probably.
Mm.
So it'd probably be good if we could throw something in the class about accessibility. And when I, mentioned a couple of things that, wow, I actually didn't know about any of this stuff, I might include this in next year's curriculum,
Wow.
if I get a chance. So even in terms of what you kind of teach, I feel like it's important, to kind of include little things like that in your classes, or in, your requirements, like, oh, make sure the document's formatted properly and you use headings, and,
Mm.
including stuff like that, in the kind of rubric, if you will, I feel like can be really valuable, because I mean, some people might still not do it, but they're probably the people who probably wouldn't do it anyway. But a lot of people will. And even if they don't do it, they've at least heard about it. They've at least heard about headings, and they've heard about alt text, and they have some exposure to it then. And I feel like it's really, really valuable for sure.
Oh yeah. 'Cause one thing that we definitely see in education is change happens a lot. Like even when I was in college, it was the norm to hand in a handwritten essay at the end of your year. And of course, now if you told students, oh, by the way, everyone used to like handwrite their essays, they'd look at you like, what? You wouldn't type your essays? Because, we didn't have laptops that were that common. But now, typing up your essay is the norm. And I remember when that came in, people were like, oh my God, how are we going to cope with this? Like, people are going to type. And now if you told a group of students to only handwrite their essay, there'd be, oh my God, it'd be a shock to the system. So
Yeah.
we've seen like changes happen in education that we thought like, God, it's going to really change how students go about assignments. And to be honest, like if they're already creating their documents in Microsoft Office Word as well as Google Docs, that accessibility really is going to be just a tiny thing and I almost said the word extra thing, and I'm trying not to say that, but accessibility just should be part of any kind of document that anyone creates. And it should just be part of the writing process, not an add-on or something you've got to retrofit. And this is one of the big things when it comes to accessibility, is people see it as that extra thing you have to do to the document. And people are saying, no, like a document is only usable or should be complete when it is accessible. And that's when the document is finished. So that's a
Yeah.
mind shift as well.
Oh no, for sure. Yeah, like it is really important to kind of think of it like that. I said even the other day with email signatures, the one that I actually did end up using actually couldn't seem to get alt text to be applied to the logo of my company for a little bit, and I actually fixed it after a while. It was fine. But I was like, I can't use this. I can't
Yeah.
use this if it's not going to have alt text.
Yeah.
And I think kind of having that mentality of this isn't actually usable or this isn't finished, or whatever. Like if I handed in my thesis and it had no headings, no alt text, it's not finished. It's the same as if I handed it in and it was missing some stuff at the end. you know I feel like that is a really great mindset. I've never actually thought about it like that. Like I feel like I kind of treated it like that, but I never really kind of thought about it in that kind of way. And I think that's actually really incredible how you've kind of expressed that there. So but yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here, because we're pretty much out of time. Well, we actually are a little bit over the time we were gonna do for this episode. But I just want to say thank you so much, Trevor. This is actually probably been my favorite episode so far.
Oh my God.
I know. You're welcome. So again, thank you so much, Trevor. And do you want to kind of promote anything before we go, or not really?
I don't really want to promote it. I just want people to talk to each other about
Mhm.
accessibility. That's the one thing I want to promote, because even
Yeah.
giving presentations to students, I've realized that we actually aren't talking as much to each other about just stuff. So like, if whatever it is that you're doing, say now or tomorrow or next week in work, try to find one person, like a family member or work colleague, and have a chat about accessibility and what you've learned about today or what you've tried out, and just try to share the knowledge and the insight and the skill with someone. That's the only thing
Yeah.
I want to promote. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And just to kind of build on that a little bit, I think it doesn't even have to be about digital accessibility. I know we've talked a lot about that, but even if you're a construction worker, and you know somebody who's in a wheelchair who has, as you mentioned earlier, Trevor, arthritis,
Mm,
even
yeah.
talking to them about that, being like, okay, well, how do you deal with, lifts? Like, is there any problems with those? What do you think could be better? Like, it doesn't have to be anything like that. Or even somebody, with dyslexia, which obviously that's not inconsequential. It's actually a pretty big deal, but I feel like people don't really think about it as much when they think about disabilities necessarily. Asking them, okay, well, you know kind of maybe getting a bit of an understanding of what the problem that they might face is, or what
Yep.
kind of fonts they like to use, as you mentioned earlier. It doesn't have to be about digital things, it could be about anything. Even
Yep.
if it's just somebody who's struggling with their mental health, and or who doesn't like loud noises, or whatever it is, just
Yep.
talking to them and getting that understanding is, I feel like, the first big step. So that's, again, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So again, thank you so much, Trevor. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening to the episode. And yeah, again, thank you so much, Trevor, for your
Brilliant.
time, and you've been fantastic.
Super. Thanks so much. Okay, and thanks everyone else for listening. And who knows, I could be back for part 2.
This is probably going to be part 3 of this episode. But yeah, we definitely might do another one in the future. So thank you so much.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, thank you, Paul. Cheers.